Unifi is one of the largest and most important textile companies in the world. If sustainability is the future of textiles, they will be one of the drivers because of where they sit in the supply chain. Representing Unifi today is their Market and Concept Development Director. He holds a PhD in Fiber and Polymer Sciences and is well known and highly respected not only in the United States, but throughout the world. Please welcome my friend Edmir Silva.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone, for attending and coming here to hear what we have to say. It's always a pleasure for us to share a little bit of what we know and see this field evolving. So here's a picture of our plant in North Carolina. Even though we work with a lot of suppliers and fabric manufacturers here in Rhode Island in the region, but I really like and happy to be here sharing what we know to make other people's life better. So what I want to do today is talk a little bit about the general plastics and fibers, give you a little taste, even though we were well educated throughout the morning already, and talk about the consumer. We, as a consumer, have a tremendous power, and I hope that share that with you guys, and we can use this power going forward. And then talk a little bit about Unifi, our recycled fiber, and then just closing the loop like we just heard about circularity. So let's talk about the plastics and fibers. So I use this graphic to show a study from closed loop partners that talk about polymers in general. And you know, it's important for us to talk about fibers and everything, but there are a lot of prime, I would say, raw material that sometimes we misplace as waste, but that are used in the industry. And you can see here, I don't know if I have a point there, but you can see here on the left some of the main polymers, and one of them is a polyester, which is resin code number 1. There are some polyolefins like polyethylene and polypropylene there. And all those products are used on the packaging industry. And as you can see, after they are used, they can be collected. Most of what the collection is on the curbside recycling. And after that, you can sort this and manufacture into those products as well. Or, you know, they go today on this storage place called waste. But the numbers on the waste, unfortunately, are pretty high. We heard numbers over 80%, 90% in some cases. A good portion of that go for incineration. But there is a small percentage that goes into new products again. So this is just a call for us to think that, you know, beyond textile, in terms of raw material, there are feedstocks that are elsewhere as well. And that's why, you know, we talk about bottles, which is included here. And some of this is using fiber. You see it there on the right corner, bottom left, bottom right corner. Fiber is also used this recycled raw material. And in terms of order of magnitude, you can see it's like 3 to 4 million metric tons that's being recycled today, but the large majority, unfortunately, goes to waste. So that's just kind of for us to keep in mind that there is some raw material beyond just the textiles. And just for you to see order of magnitude in the same study, here you can see on the grayish bar is kind of what the volume here you're seeing also pretty much millions of metric tons. And then what is the percentage by each polymer? And you can see here polyester bottles or thermoform, you know, is pretty low percentage to what is available. And the other polymers as well, not a huge amount. So if you look at the total packaging available today using polymers, only 18% are being recycled. So summarizing, there, in the plastic itself, there is a lot of raw materials out there. The recycling rate is still to be increased. A lot of that is infrastructure, so we as a consumer can change with our local governments as we talk about recycling. How can we make this collection and reuse easier? And there's a lot of commitment from the brands and retailers, and we'll dig in a little bit more because of the consumer that's being requesting and demanding for have a higher percentage of recycled products. So now shifting into fibers, to talk about fibers. Oh, by the way, this work that I showed from the closed loop partner is a free study that's on the website, their website, so you can download and kind of look, talk about this infrastructure in the U.S. And I really encourage you guys to take a look and kind of see what they have to share. To talk about fiber, I use reports from Wood Mackenzie Chemical. It's a subscription studies that they help us kind of see raw materials in the industry. But nevertheless, I want to share that with you guys because they do a pretty good job for us in terms of source of information. So if we talk about fibers, there are fibers that are natural, like we know cellulosics like cotton or wool, silk, but there are also the man-made fibers like polyester, nylon, acrylic. So all those fibers are used in an array of applications. And they have here a map, and you can see here at the bottom left is apparel, which is all this that cause or enable us to have this microclimate close to us in clothing or hygiene. And then you have on the top left the household and hospitality, like home furnishing and everything that goes in the office. And then the last portion is the industrial. So like industrial, you can think about ropes, or even in the construction, like we sell fibers into concrete reinforcement, or transport, mobility, like seat belts or car seats. So there's an array of things for you to think about textile, not just the very obvious, which is our clothing. So I use this graph kind of to talk about the growth and what are the main fibers out there. So here you have on the y-axis the volume metric tons, million metric tons, and you can see here over the years how the fiber volume has grown. You can see that we easily crossed the 100 million tons there, roughly 2020. Another interesting thing about this graph, as you can see on the crisis, there is a little dent on the growth. You see here the pandemic here, 2020. So it clearly showed that we as a consumer has a tremendous power, even though it was not something that we chose. But when we stop buying, we can make a huge dent into the volume of the fibers or products being made. Yes?
So Edmir, is this growth, clearly that's a pretty dramatic growth.
Yes.
That's caused primarily, if I read the chart right, by increasing income, so people are buying more stuff.
Yes, good point.
Population.
So on that note, for example, here in the U.S., I think the number is somewhere on the 30 or 40 kilos per person. That's $800 to $1,000 per person per year that you spend in clothing. So to your point, if the population grows, you already have a natural increase. Of course, you go to Europe, is similar, but then you go to less developed countries, it's less. But it's easily you can see, and we use this to look at, where the fibers are going, what we need to invest. But for today, I was trying to show that, polyester kind of on the base is like, because it's easy to process, it has a lot of functionalities, kind of a fiber that's grown a lot. Of course, cotton, we are very well aware, and it kind of has its share. Of course, has grown as well, but not as much. And then the other fibers, like for example, here in this chart, nylon doesn't show polypropylene because it's really tiny compared to the total volume. So because polyester is kind of like the big elephant in the room, if you will. I kind of took, again, a snapshot of polyester. You have virgin polyester here in terms of slice. A big slice goes to filament, then followed by staple, films. There is a lot of polyester uses resin. That means as a polymer to be done like injection molding or some other products. And here we start talking about the circularity. So you can see here that a lot of what's done on the resin can be done, reused as a flake. And we have a table here, a reprieve table that kind of show the actual components of this process there if you want to take a look. And you know, that goes back into fibers or filament, if you will. The recycling rate today is in this 10% kind of neighborhood. But you know, what I like about this chart is like that circularity is possible. It's just we as consumers need to keep pushing to increase this loop, if you will. And when we talk about recycling, we need kind of define what are the rules of the game, right? So we got to have metrics. We got to have a way to measure ourselves to be able to kind of see, okay, what is good, what is not so good, and kind of see how we are improving over time. And I use here the International Reference Life Cycle Data System, which has 16 dimensions. But it kind of like show you that we talk about CO2 emission, gas emission, but there is way much more things when we think about sustainability, like biodiversity or toxicity or eutrophication. So all these things, when you do a life cycle inventory, you have to take into consideration and you measure this. So that with that, you can rank products or rank process to see, okay, what makes more sense to do, what make less sense to do. And here on the right, I have just one example from World Resource Institute where they show with that, you know, if you look at just gas emission, which is the first line there, climate change, there is, if you break down the process, you know, raw material, processing, extraction, production, and then the finished product, the material production is a big portion of this process. So everything that you look at, you know, you kind of have to break down into those steps that it takes so you can understand, okay, which one has the most impact and how can I mitigate those steps. And by the way, the reason this is important is the brands have looked at this and they say, okay, if I change the material, I can easily achieve my targets. So we've been involved in a lot of conversation because a lot of brands and retailers realize that we can help them achieve their targets. So again, as a summary for this portion of the fibers, where the application happens is important for you to understand, you know, which steps have the most impact. There is a phenomenal growth of fibers, so we will continue using more and more fibers. And then we as apparel business, because it's the largest portion of this, have a significant responsibility to help turn this around and make a circular economy. So now let's kind of talk a little bit about us as consumers. And I think this is important because sometimes the consumers don't realize how powerful they are. So what's happening and what we're looking at and studying is that the consumers today are purpose-driven. So there is a lot of demand. They are social responsible. So they really like to know where their products are made, you know, where the product is going, and they understand the value. So if the consumer demands, you know, what they want in terms of recyclability or purity or, you know, where it's made, they understand the value and end up being able to acquire the way they want. So if you cannot offer what they want, they're going to go to somebody else that do. So that's kind of what we've been seeing, and it's generation also, you know. We see that there is some age ranges that believe in a certain thing, some others that have completely different understanding, and really demand that. And it's fascinating for us to be in customers, having conversation where the owner is a certain generation and the younger generation that's also taking over the family business has a completely different understanding and want to make changes. So pretty exciting to be on those conversations. And because of all those brands have their own tribes, per se, like, they have their values and therefore have people that support them as a consumer, or we support them as consumers, they have come out and put targets for themselves for a specific percentage, as you can see here, and also by specific dates, which give us a lot of motivation to be able to supply to those brands and therefore supply to you as a consumer, to us, products that we want and want to be available on the stores. So I have here a case study, if you will, of Unifi. We are a company in the Carolinas, North Carolina, that have presence worldwide. We pretty much have gone anywhere that the customer have asked us to be, but our plants are here in North Carolina. And we are a New York Stock Exchange company. I want to mention this because that means we have some legal framework, if you will, that we have to follow. Because a lot of times we put our products out there, we play by SEC rules of the game, right? And we can't do things that some other people do in some other countries. So I think that's important. And most recently, we have kind of moved into sustainability, and I'll share a little bit more about that in a bit. So we work as a fiber manufacturer and a yarn manufacturer in many different segments. Apparel is by far the largest, but we also do a lot of products that goes into hosiery, legwear, footwear, industrial, or automotive, for example. Of course, because of High Point, home furnishing is very big for us as well. And most recently with the recycling, we were able to go into like injection molding, no wovens. So there are some kind of emergent new segments for us as well. So if you look actually in our recycling product, our recycling polymer is called, or the brand's called Reprieve. We also do both polyester and nylon. Actually, we crossed the 34 billion bottles equivalent recycled. And if you look at our website, reprieve.com, there is a counter there that we kind of look at that. So what is Reprieve? It's just a 100% recycled fiber. That's high performance, meaning like whatever you get with virgin polyester, you get with Reprieve, and it's traceable, and then we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. But that's kind of like our sustainable brand to respond to this need of recycled material. So this product or this brand started back in the early 2000s. By mid-2000, we were able to find some partners, namely Patagonia and Polartec, that really help us see what products. Back in the day, we have a tremendous amount of limitations, so they help us find products that would enable us to kind of move into commercial. And then by early 2010, we put our own recycling center and moved into our bottle washing facility. And early 2022, we kind of reach or pass 30 billion bottles equivalent. So as you can see, it's not an easy climb per se. It's a hard work, and it takes time for this to happen, but also talking about the knowledge, right? The knowledge was there, but what happened here is that the consumers start asking for. So that's why I want to repeat this so we can all kind of demand this and keep asking for it. So how is this process, how this happens? So the easy way for us to explain using the bottles is like if you take the bottles baled, you can sort those, clean, wash, remove the labels, remove the caps, and then you transform that into clean flakes, which are sorted to be used. And then you go into extrusion process and do a reprieve resin, which has the tracer there to be able to be tested at any time after this process. And then it can go into extrusion or injection molding or any other process that it may require. So what that recycled material enable us to do is we can use that as a raw material to anywhere that you need pallets, like, for example, making another bottle or using on nonwovens or packaging. The filament itself are yarn that can be used on apparel, automotive, like we talk about, and then the staple, you can use that in like filtration, staple yarns. You can blend with cotton or do something else. So those are kind of like the broad applications that you can use this recycled product. And then here are some examples of some of the brands that are using recycled products today. Of course, this is not comprehensive. It's just, I'm sure you recognize some of those brands in different areas, outdoor, the retailers, hosiery, uniform, sportwear, fashion, so on and so forth. And then beyond apparel, you know, there are some other brands as well that they want to make an impact. They want to make, they want to be different, unique, and they have been working with us. Interesting on the accessories part is about the circularity. So what a lot of the brands are doing is they are thinking about the end of life. So by design, making products that are mono component like polyester or cellulosics that is easier for them to be recycled later on. So when you disassemble this. So I kind of mentioned this before. We created this product in a way that it can be verified. So when you recycle polyester, if you recycle properly, when you compare that with virgin, you can't make a difference. Like you can do all the chemical analysis, all the testing, you're not going to have statistical significant difference there to differentiate. So what we have is a tracer so that we know it's our product and what the percentage that was using with that. So we call this fiber print technology, and we also, as the customer requests, have certifications, you know, that they require. You know, we typically, you know, we created this because some of the certification is just about transaction, not actually the product. So we create the certification because we are all about the product. And we heard this earlier, if you do a life cycle inventory, do a life cycle analysis, what we created is a way using like EPA calculations to communicate with the customers, you know, what is equivalent to 34 billion bottles. So you can see here, 879 million kilos of CO2 emissions saved, or 320,000 equivalent of energy of homes, powering a home for 1 year, or water saves of 765 million gallons. So it's kind of like you can put in form that the consumer can easily understand this. And also, if you look at Sustainable Apparel Coalition, there is also a metric there called HIG index. We did a third-party verification of life cycle inventory, published this, and we have, in terms of global warming, which is gas emission, 40% better than virgin, and then compared to their generic PET, there's 20% better. This is based because we are local for local, making here in U.S. for U.S. market. So we also have a Reprieve Our Ocean, which is a product that we are ocean bound, so it's within a limit of 50 kilometers from the sea. So that's not actually going after removing plastic from the ocean, but preventing plastic going into the ocean from those small communities that don't have infrastructure like we have here. How we communicate this with the customers, you can see here examples also. The best way we found was to have those bottle counts, and for each product, put the number of bottle counts equivalent. As you saw earlier, you can be much more complex at this, but again, just trying to create this connection with the consumer, the bottle counts was the best way that we found to communicate. And then some of the brands took their, under their umbrella to use as they pleased, and I'm sure you may have come across some of those stores. So going forward, what do we see for us to close the loop? I think that was mentioned in previous presentation here. We can take fabric today and use that as a feedstock for us to make Reprieve resin as well. Today, because we can't remove the color yet, we are making all this in black, but we continue working on this, and we believe that we can make a difference in the future and evolve this as the consumer demands for more. So I'll close by saying that Unifi, I only had time to talk about product, but our plants are landfill free. We have a lot of education like today to talk about people and work, people awareness. So we are much more than just about product. And I want to thank you guys for listening, and I appreciate, and we'll be here to answer any question you may have.